Tech Tuesday webinars are brought to you by Nonprofit Webinars, which in addition to this Tech Tuesday series offers a Wednesday webinar series and provides fully customized webinar production and hosting services for other organizations. And CJW Consulting and Services, providing software and technology-related training, consulting, and services to nonprofit organizations. And by our presenters, who offer their expertise to use freely through these webinars. Please consider contacting them whenever you are looking for consulting services. Nonprofit Webinars is a project of For Good, a next-generation nonprofit collaboration platform launching soon. For Good brings together free online training with nonprofit webinars, knowledge sharing with ID Encore, vendor and consultant listings with a nonprofit direct, and much, much more. Now let me introduce our presenters. Ron and Sue Rescigno of Rescigno's Marketing Connections provides direct and social media marketing services for nonprofits and direct marketing agencies. They've been certified mailing experts since 1992, and over the past 19 years have become the one-stop shop for all things marketing. As thought leaders of a business that specializes in personalized communications, they believe in maintaining personal relationships with their customers and working together to solve their marketing challenges. Take it away, Ron and Sue.
Hi, everybody out there in webinar land. It's nice of you to join us today. I hope the weather's nice by you. Here in Chicago, we're all cloudy and rainy, so I'm hoping that you're all seeing lots of sunshine. We're going to talk today about practical strategies for writing your annual appeal. We are extremely busy at this time of year because so many of you are out there trying to get your end of year appeals out the door. And we, of course, help with all the planning and copywriting and actual production of getting those out, as well as analyzing the mailings to make sure that they're actually successful. So we're going to start today. And what we're hoping that you're going to walk away with and learn from this webinar will be why people respond to appeals. If you know why people respond to appeals, I'm sure it would make your appeal much more successful. How an appeal letter should be like a personal visit. Why do we say that? What donors really think about the appeals they receive. And the characteristics of an effective appeal. Now, before we get into this, I do want to let everybody know that there are a lot of things that we have put together, and because of this webinar, we actually wrote a little book called Annual Appeal Writing Buddy. And if you're interested, it's on our website and a PDF. So if you can, if you would like, a lot of this information that we'll be giving you today is on our website, like I said, under Consulting and Learning Resources. Okay? So I think that might help you as we're going through this, so I don't want everybody to be nervous that they have to write everything down. Okay, now I'd just like to bring up the basics of an annual appeal. I get asked this question quite a bit. Of course, everybody knows it should be the letter, which we're going to be discussing today. But the other things, of course, are an envelope. Yes, you need an envelope. You need a reply device and a return envelope. Many people have gone to just sending out a postcard that directs people to their online giving. However, statistics will prove that that is not as successful as a traditional letter in an envelope. And always include the reply device and the return envelope. Okay. Now we're going to talk about why donors give. And again, I want you all to know that Ron's going to be going through a lot of information here, but you can get this all on the Writing Buddy off of our website if you're interested.
Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to the webinar today as well. And, you know, first of all, let's all acknowledge that writing a fundraising appeal is hard work. There's no doubt about that. And what's effective for one organization might not, in other words, a healthcare organization, for example, might not work for an educational institution and vice versa. Our purpose here today is to try to simplify things for you, to make it as simple as possible. And I can tell you, if you follow some of these steps and really apply them to the writing that you're going to be doing, you are going to get better response rates. So why do donors give? What motivates them to respond? If you can figure that out in different segments, you are one leg up on everyone else, because this is a key to getting better response rates and returns. One of the first things is donors respond because they were asked. You put 3 nonprofits out there and you ask someone, why did you give to organization X and not Y or Z? And that person is likely to tell you, because organization X asked me to give. It is a basic of donor motivation. They also give because they have disposable income. Believe it or not, there are people in today's society that do have disposable income. And after they've taken care of their bills, after they've taken care of whatever their responsibilities are, they will give from that disposable income. By the way, disposable income is where the overwhelming majority of small gifts come from. It's the money left over after the bills have been paid. Donors give because it's habit forming. They watched their parents give as they were growing up, and they just continue the tradition. Today, more than ever, there's no doubt that Americans are more mail responsive, by the way, than they've ever been before. And people give, they send money because they believe in what you do. They believe in your mission. They give because they truly do want to make a difference. They want to make their mark in the world by giving to what you do and what they believe in what you're doing. They feel better about themselves. They give because they like or they want the public recognition. They want to see their name in that annual report, for example. They give because what you're doing offers hope in a world that's often very troubling. They give because they want to belong to something. They also give because, and this one I always emphasize, because you have shown that you listen to them, either by taking into what they've said on a survey and applying that in future communications or in conversations. Make sure that you listen to them when they respond to you. They give because you give them insider information. What we mean by insider information is maybe they're giving at a special rate and you're sending them a philanthropy report or a special invitation to a breakfast with the president, for example. They give because what you do validates their beliefs and their values. They give because you're easing certain fears that they may be having about who knows what may be going on in the world. They give to ease their guilt. They feel guilty that they haven't given, and they give because they do feel guilty when they don't. Because they feel it's their duty. Because they altruistically believe that it's better to give than to receive. And this last one here is very important as well. They give because they were offered a chance, or rather a choice, of options that they could give to. So by all means, give your donors choices of what they can give to. I believe I skipped over one that is probably pretty important too. Is they give for the tax benefits, and all too often we don't see that referred to in the letters. Remind your donors and your prospects that there is a tax benefit to giving. Keep reminding them of that. So we said that your appeal should be like a personal visit. So I'd like you to think of it as a kind of a silent dialogue between whoever it is that signs the letter, oftentimes the executive director or the president, and the person reading the letter. If you've ever wondered how a person decides whether or not to open a fundraising letter, just think about the ritual that you go through when you get home in the evening. You probably grab the mail, toss it on the coffee table or the counter or something like that, and Go in the house, grab the remote, turn TV on, you sit down, and you make 3 piles of letters. What you're going to look at now, you put another pile for later, and then another pile goes right into the trash. Obviously, you want your letter to go into the now pile. If it doesn't, if it goes into the later pile, the chances of it ever getting read are greatly diminished. And all of this happens in about 20 seconds worth of time. We said a little bit ago that a fundraising letter, an appeal letter, is like a face-to-face dialogue in which really what's happening is that there are these series of what we call silent questions that the reader is asking and that you need to answer in order to be successful. Here are some of the basic questions that donors or prospective donors might ask when they pick up one of your appeals. Where did the letter come from? What's inside the envelope? Who wrote it? Who signed the letter? How'd they get my address? What do they know about me? Whether I respond or not, what difference is it really going to make? Will they use my gift for what they say they're going to use it for? Is there a deadline? How do I know if the organization's honest? How long have they been doing this kind of work? Is there a better solution for the problem than they're proposing? I wonder if I give them a gift if they're going to ask again. Now, all of these are straightforward questions, right? In a face-to-face visit, the more questions that you're asked, the better it is, because what happens? It causes engagement to occur. Engagement in a dialogue, and that is the straightest path to a gift. The bottom line here, in any kind of fundraising appeal, is that you need to anticipate and be able to answer those silent questions that readers have when they start to look at your envelope and open it and look at your letter. The more involved your reader becomes in the silent dialogue that needs to take place, the more engagement will take place. If it doesn't, what happens is rejection. Talk about 2 kinds of rejection. You have a very small window of time, as we said, to engage with your reader. If you don't, your letter gets thrown in the garbage. The text in your appeal, if it doesn't speak to the reader, then you also get rejected. We will go into more detail on that as we continue through the webinar. But the question to ask yourself, and this should be something you do every time you write an appeal letter, did what I just wrote, did it spell out the benefits to the reader that he is going or she is going to receive as a result of giving a gift? In other words, you need to tell them what's in it for them. And what's in it for them are those motivating factors that cause them to give that we just enumerated a minute ago. Always answer this question, the question of what's in it for me in your appeals. So back to this scenario that we created where the clock is ticking and you've got just a few seconds to engage and really intrigue your potential reader in what you have to say. How do you create this urgency? Well, prior to opening the envelope, the recipient of your appeal tries to figure out whether they want to open it up or not. So one of the things with the envelope itself is, and we'll go into talking about this more in a bit, but you have to have an envelope that's appealing. And as Sue said, sometimes the outer envelope may not have anything on it because that in and of itself may be intriguing. But a teaser on the outside of the envelope or a graphic, a picture that entices the individual to open the envelope may be the right strategy as well. The contents of the letter then either do or don't have an impact before even a single word is read. A general impression is formed. And then think about the pictures and the headlines, because that's what your reader is going to look at first. Not the text so much, but whatever graphics and whatever you have in bold or in bullet points or underlined. If you've done a good job answering silent questions then engagement is going to happen. Remember what your objective here is, and that is eventually to get the reader to read the text. Are the benefits obvious within the first 20 seconds? So we've learned certain things over the 22 years that we've been reading and helping people with their fundraising letters, and we think we know good ones when we see them. Here's some things to keep in mind. You should send your donor as much information as you feel is needed to persuade him or her to give a gift by mail. Remember, they want answers to their silent questions. And if you're not giving them answers, they're going to be disinterested or inaction is going to result. And remember this, donors by nature are skeptical. You've got to prove to them that you are and do what you say you are and do. So speak to them about the impact and uniqueness of their gifts on what your nonprofit does. And remember that human interest stories go over very well. Play to emotions, in other words. And also remember that the format and the design you choose affect how and what your donor is going to understand. With direct mail, you've got an arsenal of different kind of communication skills, like words, of course, and pictures and numbers and paper and ink. It's how you establish credibility. So there are 3 attributes or characteristics of what an effective fundraising letter or effective appeal letter look like. First one is that it's a solicitation from one person to another. And an effective appeal letter describes an opportunity for the reader to meet personal needs or achieve personal desires by supporting a worthy charitable aim. To put that in abbreviated form, it is an opportunity for the reader to do good. We should never be shy about asking for someone to do good. Another attribute is an effective appeal letter invites the reader to take action that is specific, for example, a specific ask, rather than just give what you can. And it invites the reader to take action that is immediate. Give now. Please don't hesitate. That type of thing. Always remember, talk about the impact that the individual gifts have on the organization's ability to better the lives of those they serve. So there are a number of things that you need to know or you need to consider before you actually begin writing the appeal. I'd like to go through these now. And again, these things are all things that you have to think about prior to writing the letter. What's the purpose of the appeal? Am I writing to new donors? For larger gifts? Am I doing a major gift appeal? Is it for planned giving or to reactivate lost or lapsed donors? What do the people that you're writing to have in common with one another? Maybe they shared a powerful experience like 9/11. Or is there a particular cause that they're dedicated to? Could be an environmental issue or a patriotic issue or rare disease. What facts may be true about the majority of these people? For example, do they all live in a single community? Are they all over 60? Were they once all patients in your hospital? Are they all women? Non-donors? Members? Number 4 there, what's the mood of the people you're writing to? Right now with the government being shut down, what's the mood of the people? Are they angry or happy about that turn of events? What's the relationship of these people to your nonprofit? How do they know about you? Why would they be interested in the issue or the problem that you're talking about? What don't they know about your organization, and what might they want to know? Is the typical reader of your letter going to be, for example, a long-time reader to your newsletter, or a new donor lacking basic information about what your nonprofit does? All those things are things you have to consider. And then, does your reader have a personal connection to your mission. Like, for example, a child who might have been a patient in the hospital, a parent who benefited from your nonprofit services. Is this a time of crisis? Have earlier appeals to the same people demonstrated that they're like those you're writing to now and are likely to respond? And think about what you're going to ask people to do. Do you want them to renew their membership or send in a larger gift? Or maybe to join in an exclusive club? This next one, number 8 on your screen there, I think is very important. What is the minimum gift that you're asking for? The amount that you ask, specifically the minimum amount, usually will predetermine what you're going to get. And to be successful, your appeal must ask for a specific amount, and it has to be the right amount. What else do you want your reader to do? Do you want them to make a 3-year pledge, or maybe a monthly commitment, or fill out a membership survey, or supply some planned giving information? Why are you sending this appeal? Is there a problem? Is there a need or an issue or an opportunity that has arisen that is prompting the request? Please be specific. If you say something like, funds are tight right now, or we need more money now, that's much too simplistic out there, everybody. You've got to give specific reasons. For example, is a trustee or a friendly foundation offering a challenge grant? Has there been a shortfall in funding that's created the need for a special ask? And who's going to be signing the appeal? Or rather, let's say, who's going to be sending the appeal first? Is there a problem or a need or an issue? I guess we just did that one, didn't we? Yep. We'll go on to number 11. Who's signing the appeal? What's the signer's name? A fundraising appeal, remember, it's a letter from one person to another. And it's most powerful when it reflects the views and feelings of both people. What's the connection between the need that you're expressing and the person who's signing the letter? Now, if the signer is the executive director or the president, the connection is going to be obvious. If it's someone else, it's probably a little less obvious. Is there a connection between the signer and those who are going to read the letter? Have they had the same experiences, maybe? Are most of them around the same age? Have they shared a particular event or life experience, like the landing on the moon or the death of a president or a natural disaster? Reaching different segments of your audience with variations of your message is hard work, but it's well worth it. What are the signer's feelings and thoughts about the issue or the problem or the need? You have to know the answer to that question. Sometimes the signer of the letter has an insight or a story to tell that will bring the letter to life. And remember, it's emotional appeals, not intellectual ones, that resound with readers. You can always use the intellectual appeal after you've appealed to people's emotions first. And give both tangible and intangible benefits. If it's a letter or a newsletter or discounts on products, in other words, tangible benefits, that's fine, list them. The same goes for the intangibles, though. Will donors help you change the course of human history or save the life of a tiny child? And why do readers of your appeal need to respond right now? The urgent need or opportunity that justifies the appeal. Well, for example, if your agency serves hot meals to the poor with Thanksgiving coming up, there could be an increased demand. Is the congressional debate affecting your issue drawing to a close? Or maybe the board of directors has told you that they're going to shut your program down if fundraising goals aren't met. Is there a deadline for responses? Is there a challenge grant with an imminent deadline? Or maybe the calendar year is about to end, and along with it the opportunity to save on taxes with a donation. And what's going to happen if responses are not received before the deadline? Will the challenge grant be taken away? Will poor people go hungry? Will small animals die? Or will people with AIDS suffer needless pain? Those are all questions you need to consider when you're writing appeals. Now, that's the way I do it. Sue has a much shorter version that she's going to be happy to tell you about now.
Okay, everybody. Well, here is how I do this, like Ron said. I have a journalism background. So if any of you out there do, you know the questions to ask. It's who, what, where, when, why, how. Those are always the questions when you're writing a piece in journalism, and they're basically the same questions that Ron just went over. Who will sign the letter? Who will get the letter? What do you want the reader to do? Okay, you're asking them to do something. What is it? What will the reader get back in return? What are the benefits to the donor? What do you want the reader to when do you want the reader to respond? Okay, those are the deadlines. Where will the proposed action take place? Why should the reader respond to the request? And how will the proposed action make a difference? Okay, these are all the questions that when I go to sit down and write the letter, those are the questions I ask. Now, you might say, why do we have to answer all these questions? Like, can't I just sit down and write a letter? But what we're trying to do here is, yes, you can sit down and just write a letter. But all of these things, what we believe is if you form a fundraising concept, if you form the concept of the letter and you answer all of these questions, your letter's going to be much more successful, okay? So you're going to sit down, and when you ask all these questions, you're going to pretty much write your concept down. You're going to start to write it. You're going to write in the first person. You're going to write to the donor or to the prospect individually. You should be using a lot of yous in your letter. You want to address it to that one individual who will be receiving the letter. Now, when we say that, basically what happens is you would write one basic letter, a basic letter, and then you would say, but I have 5 different audiences that this needs to go to. And I'll just use, like, for example, a school, okay? You might have graduates, parents, you might have grandparents, you might have faculty, you might have donors. And then within all those groups, you might have some donors and non-donors. So, but what you would do is you would write the one letter, and then usually it's in the first paragraph that you can segment those letters out to be speaking to each group individually. So it's really one basic letter, but then you would have different segments, and maybe a few words in the letter or lines in the letter would change.
So it's not writing 8 different letters. It's writing basically the same letter with a swap out of one component.
Exactly. Exactly. Ooh. Oh my goodness. I almost hit the wrong button. Excuse me. Okay. So, right. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to show you a couple of first opening paragraphs that are very well done, just to give you an idea. And I want you to pay attention to, like, all the questions that Ron asked and see if these answer those questions.
And if they also describe or speak to the factors that motivate donors to respond.
Okay, and this, of course, is to a donor. Because you've been so generous to the center in the past, you've heard from me from time to time about exciting new developments here. I've told you before how far we stretched your contributions to serve the underserved in the community. Now, a renewal gift from you of as little as $25 will go twice as far as before. Your $25 will help house the homeless children of the community by enabling the center to buy $50 or more worth of lumber and tools, because your gift will be matched dollar for dollar by an anonymous donor through the center's new matching gift program. That way, you'll get double the satisfaction from your act of generosity and bring new hope to twice as many of your neighbors in the community. So I think you can see there how so many of those questions were answered. And he's asking for a specific gift. You know he's writing to the donor. You know who the letter's coming from. You know what they're doing with the money. You know how much they're asking for. So many of those things. And it's a very well-written letter. It's from the heart. That's the big thing. Don't leave the heart out of it. It's not that people don't give to institutions. They give, it's a relationship thing. They give to people. Now here's another concept, and this is to prospects. You may not know me, but I'm sure you're familiar with the museum, which has been the centerpiece of my life during the past 20 years of my tenure as the director. I'm writing to you, a fellow resident of the city, because I want you to be among the first to know about the museum's unique new charter membership program. As a person who appreciates the finer things in life, you'll cherish for many years to come each magnificent issue of our new bi-monthly magazine on the visual arts. You'll receive the magazine absolutely free of charge as a charter member of the museum, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that your charter membership contribution of $45, $75, or $150 or more will help us to showcase the exciting work of emerging new artists in the program. So I hope that by going over these, you can see how we're answering the questions in the fundraising concept.
If you just take a look at the word "you" in this letter, you'll receive, you'll have. There was another one in there that I'm not seeing right now about what the benefit to the potential donor is. It's not patting the organization on the back for all the good that they're doing. It's flattering, if you will, the donor for the good that they do through the nonprofit organization.
Right. Okay, so now let's talk about the contents of the package. Just like we talked about before, you have your outer envelope, you have the letter or a card, you have a reply device and a return envelope. You should also consider coordinating this with an email, either prior to the direct mail piece or following. And you can connect images of the piece to that email. Okay, you should put it on your website, any of your social media sites. Remember, it's all about the multi-channel. So, you know, although it's been proven time and time again, we're hearing so much that the majority of people now say they want something, especially a solicitation piece, they want it in their mailbox. That, you know, giving online is one thing, and although sometimes people will do it, the statistics are proving now that something in their mailbox, they will be more likely to make a donation.
And in fact, you know, people will give a first-time gift online, but surveys have shown that unless you get that online giver who is given for the first time to your organization, unless you can convert them to direct mail donors with the second and third gifts, they will never become more than for the majority of them, never become more than a one-time donor rather than a loyal supporter, which of course is what your aim is.
Okay, so now I'd like to talk about the PS in the letter. Now, most of you have probably already heard this, and it's so true. You should probably test yourself with this. But the PS of the letter is read first 90% of the time. 90%. And so many people just go, oh, yeah, I have to have a PS, and they say anything. But think about it. If 90% of the time that is read first, you better make sure that that PS really says what you want it to say. You want to think of the PS as a final drive to action, to make somebody move, to make somebody have a reaction to your letter. Use the PS as an opportunity to convey the deadline, the dollar-for-dollar match, the families who will benefit. We have a sample up here on our slide that shows you a piece that we did, and the PS we actually put into a call-out box, and we personalized it. And a call-out box is just that blue box on the bottom, but your eyes are drawn to that. And people do, they read that first, just like they do the PS. And we just really wanted to hit home with this, so we put it in the blue box. The function of the PS is to involve and motivate the reader to turn to the lead of the letter. So you want them to read that PS and then go and think, wow, this looks like something I should read more about, and then they're going to go up and read your lead. Okay? Now, the body of your appeal, this is where, of course, you go ahead and you tell the rest of the story. You tell the whole story. I am a firm believer that your letter should be no more than 1 page. And if you work for an executive director or boss who thinks it has to be longer, my advice to you then would be make sure you get most of the information in your first paragraph and your PS, because people just do not have the time to read, 2- and 3-page letters. Another suggestion is always, if you're writing to prospects and you feel you need to explain more, sometimes it's better to have your letter and then have a brochure in the piece about your programs and services. But to put it all just in a letter, people tend not to read it. So you want to make sure once you answer all those questions, you have the opening paragraph that is really strong. They say you're supposed to even put your ask in the opening paragraph. I know that I struggle with that sometimes myself. So if I don't get the opening, if I don't get my ask in the opening paragraph, I make sure it's in my PS.
But Sue, one way to get around that to a certain extent is by, at least for donors, acknowledging what their past gift was in the first paragraph.
Yes, and that that's a good way to do it, Ron. Acknowledging that you know that they have given in the past, and even reminding them of what that gift was. Visuals, we want to make sure that you make your letter, I always say make your appeal letter appealing, okay? It should be appealing to look at. You can do this through many different ways. You want to use color, you want to underline words or phrases, you want to bold statements. You want to make sure that it's easy on the eye for your prospect to read, okay? And they will read it if it looks nice. And even if you're only getting them to read parts of it, you want to make sure that those parts that are really important are the parts that are bolded and underlined. You just don't want to overdo it. Sometimes I've actually gotten letters that almost every line was underlined. And you don't want to overdo it like that. Try to use color. You can indent. Bullets are great.
Remember, that's all part of the arsenal of communication tools that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Okay, and now I wanted to talk to you about the reply device. Your reply device really should be a personalized reply device. There's so many reasons why you should personalize it, especially since when it comes back to whoever's doing your data entry, the data processing is so much easier on somebody when it's a personalized piece. And you can see on this slide how you can personalize the name and address and city, state, zip. When that comes back into your office, if that's all written out like that, it just makes it easier. And we just want to make sure that things are entered correctly. When they are trying to reply off of a remittance envelope, the remittance envelope is the one with that big flap on it that they actually write things out. If they're writing that out, then your gift processor is trying to read their handwriting, which makes it very difficult. So we highly suggest the personalized reply device, and not only by the name and address, but also up where it says encloses my contribution of, and then it says 75, 100, 250, 500. I think that also should be personalized. If you're sending that to donors, and I am a $100 donor, you don't want to start that line at $75. So mine, it's very easy if it's in your data, if your last gift amount is in your data, and they put your name in there, they should also be able to put encloses your contribution of, and that should correspond with what you gave last year. Okay? Okay, and then the teaser. Don't forget to use your envelopes to put teasers on them to get people to open up your envelopes. Will you accept the challenge was the one that Sinai Health Systems used. They had a big challenge grant going on. So will you accept the challenge? It kind of made people wonder, what is that about? So you can personalize that. You can say, you know, Sue, will you accept the challenge? But that using the outside of your envelope, Ron mentioned earlier that sometimes you don't want to have anything on the outside of your envelope. Sometimes I've done it where you just put the executive director's name and the name of the organization and address, and that's it. And then they know it's coming from the executive director. But sometimes you want to have a teaser just to get them to open the envelope.
And so you say, well, which is better? How do I know what's better? That's where testing comes in. You know, test different segments and see where you get the best responses from.
Right, and you will find it. Now, the way I use them, if it's of any help to you, is that I don't always use them. I use them when I think that it's a good idea. Like I think, okay, this might be something I could, you know, put on the envelope, but I don't overuse them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So they're a good idea if you've got something interesting to try to tease them about. Okay. I think we got through everything now, so if there's any questions, we would be happy to answer them.
Hi, Sue and Ron. We do have a lot of great questions today. So let's start with a question about online donations, and we do have a couple. So we have a question from Mary asking if donors that get physical mail solicitation give online rather than use envelopes and mailing, or do they use the envelopes predominantly?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh.
Could you say that again?
Yeah, my apologies. So Mary asks if donors that get a physical mail solicitation tend to give online, or if they do continue to use the envelopes in mailing their donation back, or, you know, what's the split there? Is it one to one, or?
We find that they normally, we ask for both. We make suggestions for them to do both, like that they can either use the return envelope or they can go online to give a gift. However, what we suggest is that people actually track how people are responding. So if Joe Smith always goes online and gives a gift, and you know that for the last couple of years that's what he's been doing, that's when you communicate with your donor and say, would you prefer this? And if he prefers to do things online, then there's no reason to be sending him everything. And that is tracking is very important, and we're suggesting that to do that with all of your donors, like finding out when they normally give and things like that, so you can speak with them and work directly with how they want you to deal with them. Some people would prefer to be contacted via email. Does that answer the question? Okay.
I think so. Great. Thank you very much, Sue. We also have several questions about whether or not you should provide a postage paid reply envelope, or if you should have them put the postage on themselves.
Okay. There are two envelopes out there. One is called a business reply envelope. That is where the donor does not have to put a stamp on it. That's where it says no postage necessary. The other one is a courtesy reply. A courtesy reply is where they put the stamp on it themselves. The problem with the business reply is that the business reply, you need to open up an account at the post office, and for each one of those that come back to you, they will cost anywhere between like $1.25 and close to then up to $2 a piece to come back in. When I first started in the business 22 years ago, everybody used the business reply envelopes. Today, nobody uses them because they're so costly. So I would say 99% of the organizations that we deal with use courtesy reply envelopes where the donor has to put a stamp on it themselves.
Great, thank you. So Gwendolyn asks if you have any thoughts on inserting a personal note in the letter, for example, from a board member whose contacts are on the list.
I would say that is, first of all, if you can find board members willing to do that, fantastic. And yes, anytime you can find board members to insert personal notes into the letters, that is one key fundraising strategy that we see works very well.
Great, thank you very much. So we have Mary who asked how you get or find people's email addresses. And I assume this is for the list, for their mailing list. So if you have any tips on that, that would be great. And I'd also like to mention, Mary, that we've held several webinars on this topic that you can find in our archives on nonprofitwebinars.com.
The only idea I would have for that is that we try to capture email addresses via the reply device. So like on the reply devices, we ask for email addresses and phone numbers, and then we ask them how they like to be contacted. But that's the only way that I could think of, because it's really research and getting those email addresses.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so you mentioned personalization a few times during today's webinar, and Tisha asked, what if you can't afford to personalize your emails? Then how should you proceed, or what are kind of low-cost ways to personalize?
Okay, well, the question is sometimes it's not really, oh, I don't even know how to say this. Like, okay, so you should be thinking about the return on your investment for your money, not how much it is per piece, but how much money you're going to raise and how much money you need to raise. And I would suggest that you cut your list and narrow your list down if price is the issue. Not that I wouldn't send a generic letter to everybody because your response rate is going to be terrible. So I would research your list and do a good job on a small portion of your list rather than sending to the whole list and not personalizing. So it really shouldn't be a question of, do we personalize or not? It should be how many do we send to, because you'll get a better response rate.
Great. Thank you very much, Sue.
Sure.
And we have a question from Diane, and she asks if all of this information can apply to a first-time appeal from a new organization, or if you have any modifications that should be made.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, Diane, for a first-time organization, obviously, yes, most of this does apply, but there is a little bit more of an education process that does go on as to who you are, what your mission is, what your values are in that case, and that's where, as Sue suggested, in addition to the letter to the prospects. In fact, we're doing this now for a pet organization. They've never appealed. They're a relatively new, very relatively new organization, and they've never sent out an appeal before. And included in the appeal is going to be a small, not 5 or 6 pages or anything like that, but a small brochure that kind of would answer any questions that fill in the gaps as far as who the organization is, what their mission is, who they serve, and how they hope to make an impact in the community. So there is that added onus on the nonprofit, the new nonprofit, to do a little bit of an education process there.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron.
Sure.
And we have a couple of questions about including polls and surveys in your appeal letter. So we have one question from Wing saying that the organization is looking to poll the donors, mostly alums. How many questions are too much to go on the reply device? And then Chris asks, are response surveys an effective way to boost replies and donations, and could it go on the back of the response card?
Yes, the surveys can go on the back of a response card, for sure. The other thing is, remind me of that first part. I had a thought on that, but now I've forgotten.
Was it Wing's question about how many questions are too many
right.
to go on the back?
Okay. I would say no more than between 6 to 10 questions for a survey. At least that's the norm that I see when organizations are trying to find out information. But again, I want to say, I think, don't be discouraged by doing one survey and not getting much response. The more people see that you are asking them questions, the more often I think they will respond to those questions. And the more information, obviously, you can gather on them, the better. But I'd say that 6 to 10 and no more than that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ron.
Yep.
And so Steve has a question about timing. He asks, is it too late to send an appeal letter now and then another one at the end of the year? Perhaps the one now could be for plan giving, but it would still mean that the same donors would receive 2 letters.
We have lots of people who are sending out 2 letters now. There's a lot of people are trying to get it out before November 1st. And then they're sending another letter out December 1st. Yeah, so I think you've got plenty of time.
I just want to add to that. You know, there are some places probably that at this point, when I say some places, some marketing companies that will that aren't able to take your appeals. If there's anybody out there that is having that problem, you can certainly give us a call, and we will try to work you in to our schedule. It is the busiest time of the year, but being that you're on this webinar and we would like to earn your business, certainly give us a call, and we would try to fit you in.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron.
Sure.
And I think we have a couple of questions about kind of the amount of the donation. So we have a question from Janice asking about how you remind a past donor of the specific amount of their last donation and some advice on how you ask them to increase it.
So you usually want to refer to the last donation as a reminder. A lot of people will have forgotten what they gave last year. So it should be something like, you know, we so appreciate your last contribution of $100. We certainly hope we can count on you this year to increase your gift to $150. So the increase, and then of course you're talking about what it's going to be going to, but it's always reminding them of what they gave last time and then asking them for a little bit more. And normally the increases in organizations, they decide how they want to do that, but normally it's at least a $50 increase.
Great, thank you, Sue.
Sure.
And we have a question in a similar vein from Pamela asking about how you determine the minimum gift and how does this minimum gift predetermine the gifts overall?
Well, the minimum gift is if you have done analysis on your program already, you would know what your average gift is. So if you know that your average gift from your donors is $75, then you ask for $75. If you don't have that information, you can easily figure that out, figure out how many donors you have and what they're donating and figure out an average gift. Or you could, a lot of people start with, depending on, where they're at, but I know here in the Chicagoland area, it's normally a $75 or a $50 first gift. That's what they're asking for.
Great, thank you very much, Sue. And we did receive a couple of questions about recommendations for donor database software so that people can personalize their emails and their mailings. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions. And I'd also like to say that I believe we've had webinars on this topic by Sherry Weissman, the director of the Tech Tuesday series as well. They're in our archives at nonprofitwebinars.com.
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I was going to say, is that I would ask Sherry. I mean, we personalize everything here, and we work with a lot of different databases, Razor's Edge and eTapestry and Sage, and we've got some clients that just have Access. So yeah, but Sherry is the expert on the databases.
Great, and I think that's about all the time we have left. You still have a few questions left over, and you'll receive them after the webinar, and I'm sure you'd be happy to answer some of these questions.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering if you had any last words.
Well, just to remind everybody that if they'd like to access our annual appeal writing buddy, they can go to our website, www.rescignos.com, and go to consulting and then learning resources, and you'll be able to access that. And in it are even more strategies for using PSs, strategies for leads for the letter, for ends to the letter, how to rate it. There's a very good, the last portion of the Writing Buddy is how to rate your fundraising appeal. It actually asks you questions where you can sort of self-grade the appeal after you've written it, and see how you grade out being your own worst critic oftentimes. So want to thank everybody for being out there, and again, if you ever want to contact us, you have our information there on the screen, and we're happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you so much, Ron and Sue, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.